All righty. We will get started. Top of the hour here. And want to thank you guys for joining us today. I know everybody's really busy with closing up renewals and new business. So you can enjoy time with your family for the holidays. So I appreciate those that are joining. Those that aren't able to, we'll have a recording, send it out afterwards. So real quick, I am Rachel Zeman with Benelinx. I'm the founder and CEO. I've got Jessica Smith here, who's on our marketing team, and Ian Legler, who is a Salesforce certified admin, who helps with onboarding and support as well. So thanks again for joining us. Today, we're going to talk about reports and dashboards. As I was putting this presentation together, I added introduction because it's a beast. The reports and dashboards within Salesforce, which is not a Benelinx feature, is a very big part of the Salesforce system. And so we will definitely be having kind of your beginners, which is this session. We'll do more of an advanced and then an intermediate, which probably won't be me presenting it. But so we want to give you a kind of an broad stroke of the features today, and then we will definitely have some more sessions with a little bit more detail. So reports and dashboards. Again, I'm going to kind of go through the outline and then we'll pivot and kind of show and tell within our sample demo site today. Overall, let's talk about what the differences are between reports and dashboards. Obviously, a report, something to keep in mind with building out a report, right? That's basically pulling in variables and fields and records into a report form. A couple things we'll talk about, and probably the hardest part, I think, of building out a report, a brand new one, is understanding the relationship between our objects. We talk about objects, it's a Salesforce term, right? Those are the tabs at the top of my navigation bar. Those are categories, big, huge chunks of categories and groupings of our records. And we have to be aware that when we're building reports, we need to think about the outcome and the end result. What are we looking for? What do we want to pull out of the system? What kind of information do we want to see? And a lot of times it's not just from a single object, right? It's not just from accounts. It may be accounts that have account information and policy information. Now we've got dual objects that we're talking about and relationship between those. So it takes a little bit for me. It took quite a while actually to understand how to build that out and understand we have to look at the end result of what we're trying to create and what kind of data we're trying to pull out of the system and understand what objects are those fields coming from, right? So we can understand how to build that correctly the first time. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the demonstration here. Obviously, with building any kind of report, just like in Excel, we're going to be able to create filters. What do I not want to see, right? What do I want to eliminate when I'm looking at an account record? Do I want to see all accounts or just want to see my clients? And even further, maybe my in-force. Maybe I want to remove the terminated client. So filtering. And then what fields do I want to see visible, right? So I can see the summary of that data. We'll talk a lot about the chart, the visibility of charts, both not only in reports, but also in dashboards. And I'll give you some advice on if you're going to put reports into dashboards, whether you should build that chart in the report or not. But it's optional, right? We can turn it on and off. That really basically takes this report and makes it visible in some type of a graph. Dashboards. So what the difference is, right, between a report and a dashboard. And a dashboard is actually a page within Salesforce that has many reports, right? So this is a great way for us to see lots of different reports coming from lots of different places in the system. I may want to see my in-force client report, but I also may want to see commission report next to it. I may want to see what the action reports are, what's open as far as customer service. Those are all reports from very different places in Salesforce or Benelinx, and I can put them all in one place so I can see them. I'm going to show you some cool things today too about how we can make those dashboards a favorite, even put them on our dashboard and make them the first thing we see, our navigation bar, I mean, and make them the first thing we see when we go into the Benelinx Salesforce system. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about some of the lingo of how we build out our dashboard with widgets. That's a newer term. I don't know how much I like it. And then some filtering that we can add, which is probably kind of we'll talk a little bit about it today, but that'll definitely be in kind of the more advanced training at another date. Overall, I'm going to show you the layout, the landscape. I talk about this a lot when we do training with our clients going through onboarding or new clients, but reports and dashboards are the two places in Salesforce where it looks and feels very different. Okay, so everywhere else where I talk about when you click on the tab at the top of your navigation bar, it all looks the same. Well, guess what? Unfortunately, reports and dashboards don't look the same, and I'm going to talk you through what the good news is. The two of those objects or features looks the same together, but they don't look like the rest of the system. So we're going to talk about how do I make sure I understand what the differences are from just a visual perspective, right? How do I see the recent reports and or dashboards, make sure I'm creating them correctly. This is the only place in Salesforce, or I shouldn't say only. I think there's maybe one other place Ian would know, where there's folders, right? People ask me all the time, can we save as, can we create folders in Salesforce? And most of the time it's creating those related records versus an actual folder. But in reports and dashboards, this is where we have kind of the traditional folders, filing system, and also a save as, which we don't have anywhere else in Salesforce. So definitely these two features were built together, right? And they're a little bit, I would say, kind of an older model. So we'll definitely make sure you know how to kind of navigate through those two features. And then we'll talk about favorites again. This is where we can kind of tag which reports and which dashboards we want to get to quickly. I'll show you the filing system. There's a ton of templates. Some of those templates came from Salesforce. Some of them came from Conga Composer. Some of them came from Benelinx. So it's a lot of folders and a lot of files. And so definitely want to talk about how we can tag the ones we want and make sure we can get to them quickly. And then, like I said, we can even put them on our dashboard, or our navigation bar, which is cool. Okay. So overview about building new reports. This is the hardest part. Again, we'll go through this and I'll show and tell this piece, but you know, editing a report is a lot easier than building a brand new one. And this is why, is we really need to define that report type to start. So we need to think about the outcome. When I go through this with clients, when they're like, I want this report, okay, we need to talk through. What do you want to see? What kind of data do you want to pull out? Where is it coming from? And define those objects so we can build that report that pulls those relationships between the account and the policy, for example, together. Otherwise, when we start that report, that first step, if we don't get that right, then we can't build the report that we need. Let's start all over. Cool thing is, Salesforce gives us the ability, if the standard report types aren't available, if we build a lot of custom features inside your org, which gives us that flexibility to do with Salesforce, no problem. We can actually build a custom report type to accommodate that, and we can even add some of those custom fields to our reports. So we have a tremendous amount of flexibility. Thank you. Tell Salesforce again. I'll walk you through the report builder, and I'm going to show you some tips and tricks, right? Some things that'll make your life easier, things to remember about when you start building your reports. We'll go through the filters, what to include and what to exclude, just like, you know, when we went through the training on list views. Remember list views? They're very similar and they're built and structured very similar to our reports and dashboards. So if you remember that, and I preach about list views all the time, you're going to build it just like you would build a list view. You're going to build your reports. One kind of unique term here is this outline, which is the place where we add our fields that we want to display in our report. That trips people up a little bit. It's kind of an odd term in my opinion as well. So it's kind of unique to the reporting feature. Additional report features, charts. So once we build the report, right, we're going to be able to export it, which I'll talk about. But we can also make the charts or graphs visible. So it's a great way to represent our data, right? And we'll talk about how we can add and remove those, what chart types are available. Salesforce is going to tell us, depending on how we built our report, what is available. I've had people ask, well, how come the chart feature is grayed out? Well, the way that you built your report, then charts aren't available. Okay, and then there'll be some that might be grayed out, again, depending on how we build our report. We can modify it and then we'll see how we can make that work. And we can copy those charts actually to our dashboard if we wish, when we put that report on a dashboard. We'll briefly touch on field editing, which is a newer feature that Salesforce has released in the last year or so, where I can actually, in my report, I could update a field. I could change the field name. I could change the policy type, for example. We'll talk about that. But be careful, right? We're changing the data within those records or those fields. And we'll talk a little bit about the search feature. I have found this very helpful. This is another newer feature where I pull up and I generate a report and I'm looking for a particular record, and I can do like a Control F is the equivalent of what we can do in an Excel file. And I can do that inside of my report inside of Salesforce, and I can help find those records quickly. So I do like that feature quite a bit. Okay, dashboards, similar but different, right? So I'll walk you through. We have to save and create a dashboard to start. We will determine visibility for those that have a larger agency or business that are on the call. You may have a group or many groups established, so you're going to determine the visibility of those dashboards across different locations potentially. We'll talk about the widgets, which is a new term again for Salesforce, which are really what that means is going to be our charts that are coming from our reports, charts or tables. We can add text and even images, and I'll show you an example of that as well. Charts and tables, like I said, so that's going to be pulling in from when we drag and drop our reports. So we create the reports first, and then we can move those reports into our dashboards. There are some enhanced chart features. This is one of those tips and tricks. So if we're going to be adding a report to a dashboard, a lot of times I would recommend don't bother building out the chart in the report, build it then once it's in the dashboard, and you'll see there's some additional features to make that chart a little bit more visible. We can sort, order, and then obviously we can do some customizations with some themes and add some additional titles, etc. Lastly, there are some capabilities, however, a little limited with changing some of the design. I can go dark versus light on the general design of my dashboard, and I can change some general theme colors. They haven't gotten to the point where we can get a little bit more specific with what we want to see as far as those colors, but I'll show you where those are. I wanted to mention in this session the Home tab, because the Home tab is kind of a unique tab in Salesforce, and it includes components and our default Home tab that we give our clients on the Benelinx agency management app has a dashboard. So that is completely editable by you, and within that dashboard there are reports. So I thought it was important for us to have a little bit of time to talk through that and make sure you understand how that can be broken apart and adjusted and changed if you want to. In addition, there's these other components that we'll briefly touch on. Probably eventually we'll have a whole session on what these components are when we get to kind of the lightning page kind of system admin training. But it is important to know there's some drag and drop components that we could add in addition to our reports and dashboards. And really important, again, this is a little bit of a lightning component page with the home, but within the activation, and there are some limitations on our home tab on what we can activate and who can see it. So we can't change the home tab per user, unfortunately, at this point. Hopefully it's a new feature that Salesforce will update in the future. We are limited to the application, which is our agency management app, and profile, not permission settings. So for the majority of us, it's kind of an all or nothing homepage, just based on kind of how we have your user permission settings set. Lastly, we want to talk a little bit about updating and exporting features. So the ability for us to refresh. So the way Salesforce's reports and dashboards work is that we have and we run a report, right? Or we refresh a dashboard and it pulls all the new data in. If I do a lot of updates in the system and I look at a report or dashboard, it may not have that new information in. So we have to refresh. It's going to pull all that information again when we initiate that. And we can do that kind of ad hoc as we need to, right? We're going to engage and push that as needed, but we can also schedule those so that they happen daily, weekly, monthly. So it's a really cool feature. It also, the potential for us to have an email sent to us when that does refresh, and also invite different users to join with those reports and dashboards. And lastly, I didn't want to forget about that the export ability of reports and dashboards, right? So the dashboard, we're limited to downloading, a snapshot of what that dashboard looks like. However, it's still very pretty and great for kind of our stewardship reporting. And it downloads it into an image, it's JPEG or PNG. Exporting though for our reports, right, is the full data export. And that can come out in an Excel or CSV. And there's a couple different formats I'll show you and talk a little bit about why would I choose a formatted version versus a detail only. But Salesforce gives us a couple different options, which is great. So we're going to pause on training. Everybody's ready for a break, right? We have kind of the holidays in between the week for the next couple weeks between Christmas and New Year's. And so we're going to pause and sending out an invite even because it's quite a bit of ways down the road. We'll be sending out an invite right after the holidays, that first full week in January back to work. And then we will start the next session, January. I think we've got it set for January 14th. Same place, same time. And it'll be about commissions training. So hope everybody has a great holiday and has a good break. We will be on throughout the next 2 weeks. So if you guys need anything, you're catching up, you can always reach out to support. We'll have some of our folks that will be monitoring the support and be able to reply to you during the holiday break as well. So let's jump on in. Let's take a look. This is why I broke it up. I think this is a great first session. Definitely not ending with that. It's a lot to learn. As Ian, I'm starting to adopt Ian's lingo. It's definitely a place in Salesforce that you can tinker and spend a lot of time just kind of really navigating, understanding. It's not something you probably learn in a day by any means. And there's lots and lots and lots of tutorials that Salesforce provides us around reports and dashboards. So again, I want to emphasize reports and dashboards are not a Benelinx built feature. Okay. This is a standard feature that Salesforce provides us. So, take that with a little grain of salt, a little grace, right? When we are helping our clients, this is something we're learning and using as well. And again, it's evolving just like everything in Salesforce. And so I learned something new every day. I just responded to a client the other day and didn't realize I had to do some research. So it's important to note that though. Okay. So this is one of the areas that I would probably recommend using some of the additional resources within the Salesforce system. And remember, we have a couple different places we can get to that quickly. We have the guidance resources. If I go in, for example, I think we did this the other day. If I go into the reports tab and I go to that guidance, it's going to pop up some additional training and information about the reports and dashboards, or it did the other day for me here. And I can also log in to Trailhead, which is a Salesforce massive training site that'll give us more information. And again, because reports and dashboards are standard Salesforce features, feel free to, Google it, look up some of the resources that are available online, go through Trailhead, learn as much as you can about reports and dashboards. It's going to function exactly the same way. Now, the objects and the fields are going to be different, but the use cases of how to use these two features are going to be the same because they're not ours, they're Salesforce. So let's talk a little bit about jumping in to looking at, this is our testing site. So I'm going to go back to the home page, but you can see we go into our agency management app and you can see by default kind of how we have standardly organized your navigation bar is that your home page is first and your dashboards and reports feature are second and third. As I mentioned, kind of the first thing that we're going to talk about is the feature layout. And as we've gone through several times in different training, when I click on any of my other tabs, right? If I click on the tab, not the drop down, it takes me to a list view and it looks like this. So all of these tabs look the same, except for reports and dashboards. When I click on the tab reports and dashboards, you can see, as I mentioned, we've got this side panel, right? And it gives us almost like a set list view. We don't get to edit it, but they give you kind of this menu, right, of features to work from by default. And if I toggle over to the dashboards, guess what? Same result, right? So these two features work the same, but they're different than everything else. So just starting off, you're like, whoa, wow, this looks different, right? So we want to prepare you for that, right? So just like a list view, though, that's kind of on a side pane, guess what is first? Recently viewed. That default that we all love to hate. Then we love it again. because we learn how to use it. But by default, it is going to show recent. Now, just like a list view that's recently viewed, if you haven't recently looked at anything in reports and dashboards, unlike me, who you can see I've done a lot of looking, then this is going to be empty. It doesn't mean that you don't have anything in reports and dashboards. It means you have nothing in your recently viewed. So it functions just like a list view. It's just kind of like a side list view. Okay. Same thing with dashboards. Recently viewed. If you haven't looked at anything, you're not going to see anything. Does not mean that there are not dashboards. Okay. Standardly, we provide our clients with some templates. When you want to see what's in this, what's, in all the records, then go to all. Just like you would do with reports, you can go to all. Okay. Really, really important to note that we have a lot of reports. There are so many. And if I keep scrolling, we're going to go from, our Benelinx standard templates that we provide you to Salesforce standard templates. Conga, if you have Conga Composer, there's some templates. So it's a lot. I'm not going to lie. It's a lot of reports. So just like, when I go to my all for accounts, I would probably not recommend going to all. What I would do first, if I'm just trying to kind of do a general navigation of what's in the system for me, I would go to all folders instead of all reports. Because remember, this is really one of the only places in Salesforce I have file folders, essentially. And now I can see my file folders a little bit clearer. Okay. Just like when I go to dashboards, I can see if I have any folders there as well. Okay. So I would probably start there, and then I can always drill down if I get to a folder that I like, and I'm like, let's look at the commission reports. Now I can go in the folder, and now I've got a ton of, subfolders and actual files. Okay. So be careful of this. Recently viewed versus, right, all folders. So, as far as going in and finding information, and being able to set that and understand what's in there. So column width, if you ever have that problem, find your gear and reset it. Okay. Even further, what I always recommend when we're building a report, we're going to grab an existing template. Let's say I am going to build a commission report. I go into my missing commission report. These are the standard reports we give you. I always recommend is if I'm going to modify a template, is that I go in and I create a new folder for myself and I save as. I don't want to override the template. Why? Because now the template's overwritten. If I need to go back to the original, it's gone, right? So when we go in and we're going to, if we're not going to create a brand new report, we're going to grab an existing one and modify it. Go ahead, find a sample that you like. Instead of overwriting it though, let's go in and again, when we go into our editing, save as. Again, the only place in Salesforce that still has the kind of legacy save as feature. Dashboards apply exactly the same way. Okay. Definitely save as those templates. If I just save, then it's going to override what I'm doing, and it's a great opportunity for us to play around again, tinkering. So definitely go in and save as, right? A couple other things to be careful of is we got private and public reports, right? Same with private and public dashboards. Private, again, are only visible to me. Public, then I can determine who gets to see those reports. Lastly, you can see my list of reports here. I'm going to be able to go in and I'm going to be able to set this as a favorite. If I do that, right, now for future reference, I not only can get to my reports that I want to see quickly through either a folder that I can create, or I can create, a new folder, Rachel Zeman, or I can go back and find my favorites very quickly. There it is. Okay. If I decide I don't want that as a favorite, I can unfavorite. I also can see those favorites up here in my favorite area. Okay. So definitely organization from the beginning is really important when we're in reports and dashboards. I would definitely, before I even get started, I would create my folder. That is then where I'm going to put all of my information, right? I'm going to create a test folder. That's going to give me now a place for me to go in, grab any reports that exist, create new reports, and put them all in here. And then I can even make this a favorite, I believe. I can make a folder a favorite even. So now I can go back. Definitely want to utilize building those folders, putting your reports or dashboards in those folders, and even making those favorites, because there's just a lot of volume in here, okay? And then you'll be able to isolate and find it quickly. So definitely recommend doing that. Okay, let's jump in and create a brand new report. So two different options, right? Like I always recommend, if I can find an existing report that is close to what I want, I'm going to do that first. It's always easier. It's always easier to clone a list view than to build one from the ground up, right? So if I can't find what I'm looking for, you can always reach out to us. We'll help you get started, right? A lot of time building that shell is a lot easier to modify than to build it from scratch, because we're going to ask you some of these initial questions that are tough when you're building a report for the first time. If you build it from scratch, this is the beginning and the most important step. And unfortunately, if I don't get this step correctly, and I spend an hour building a report, and I realize at the end of that hour that I don't see a field I need to finish my report, Salesforce doesn't give us the ability to change report types. We have to start all over. And so we want to make sure we get this right as much as possible from the beginning, and that's why we'll help to get you started if we need to. Okay. Report type. This is where I was saying we have to make sure we're defining what type of fields that we want to pull into our report and where do they come from, right? If I'm trying to pull up total monthly premium, that is a field on a policy. And if I also at the same time want to pull in the renewal month that's on the account, I've got now two objects. I've got to build a report type and find a report type that has data or fields from the account object and from the policy object. So we have to think about this before we just jump in. Beautiful thing about Salesforce, and I tell this people all the time, we're not limited in what we can report on, right? Other systems, they give you like 5 reports to choose from, right? And and then you can vary it slightly. We give unlimited, you know what I mean? Which is great. We can build our own report types. The challenge with that is we can build our own reports, and we can do almost build anything in the report feature, but we have to understand what we're trying to accomplish, kind of back into it, and make sure that we start with understanding where are we pulling the information from, right? And make sure that we understand the account and policy objects have to be part of this report type for us to successfully be able to pull those fields in together. Okay, so enough said with that. But this is the hardest part. This is the part that I still struggle with. You have to really cognitively understand what you're looking for to back into that and make sure you start in the right place. Again, though, when I create a report, guess what? Recently viewed, love it, hate it, love it, right? And so we'll just be careful again. So when we're looking for categories, right? Again, we're thinking about, I want accounts and policy information. So get out of the recently viewed. Again, if you haven't done any report building, this is going to be empty, and start looking at different categories. I would start with accounts. Almost everything is related to accounts, right? I would probably go to this, and they're giving us accounts with all kinds of stuff here, right? This is where we're going to start to understand how we want to pull in those related relationships between these objects for us to be able to build our report correctly. This is why this is the hardest part. But we have everything in here. We have tasks we can build reports on. We have all kinds of stuff you can look at, some of it's pretty cool that I haven't probably dug into in a long time. So just finding the categories or even going to all, but I like starting with some of these to be able to know, oh, okay, yeah, a task is an activity. Now, is this what I'm looking for? It gets me a little bit closer to finding that report type quicker. For today's purposes, we're going to go accounts policies. Okay. So selecting that report type is critical, and then I can go to start building my report. Then it opens up full screen, right? So once I have it set, that report type, then I can start building my report. If you're looking at sample reports that are already built in the system and you're like, well, what type of report is it? What report type is it? Because it's similar to what I want. Here it tells you right here. The report type we just selected was accounts with policies, okay? The first thing I do when people are struggling with reports is I open up the report they're building and I look here. Because if I'm trying to pull a field in from policies, guess what? And I only have this under accounts, I'm not going to find it. Because I'm not looking in the policies object. So this is the first place I look to know if people are building their reports correctly or not. It's the first indicator. Okay. And what this means, again, is it's giving me the ability to pull in fields from my account object and also fields from my policy object. Okay. So this is the field type. If I go to the right, here's another tip and trick. By default, not sure why, Salesforce turns this preview off. I think Ian told me once why, because I think it can bog down the system. So you can turn it on and off. I usually tell people that turn it on and just leave it on unless you're finding the system really kind of struggling because you have, 500,000 records you're trying to create. But most people don't know that this is a feature to turn on. So you can definitely turn it on and off, but my recommendation is turn it on. What that does is as I build my report over here, this preview page is going to churn. It's going to update as I build the report. Report building is plug and play, but the beautiful thing about what Salesforce gives us with this preview feature is I can see what I'm building. I may not know 100% of what I'm trying to build, right? I might even think about a field I want to add that I didn't think about at the beginning. As I build the report, if this is on, I will see how the report changes and modifies as I build it. I don't have to save and run it to get a preview of my data. All right, so if I go in here, some of this stuff is Salesforce defaults. I don't care about the activity date. I don't care about the owner, for example. I can start removing it and see what happens as I update it. It's changing what I'm seeing on the page. Okay. Now, one thing to remember as well, again, we get in trouble with this preview. It tells you what it's doing. It says previewing a limited number of records. Inevitably, someone's going to build a report and they're going to call me freaking out that there's a bunch of data missing from their system. It's preview. If I'm looking at a handful of records here, what if I have 5,000? Salesforce isn't going to load that in the preview screen. For me to see all records, I do need to save and run, and then it'll pull all records in. So this truly is a preview screen. Don't worry if you're looking at the page and something's not there, it's grabbing a snapshot of your data. And especially when you have high volume, right? If you're looking at building a high volume report, it definitely is not going to pull in all your data. Save and run, and then it'll pull all of it in for you. Okay. So little things make a big difference. I'm trying to cut down on the frustration as you start to build these out. Turn it on, understand it's a preview, and then you can see here, remember what I tell you all the time, Salesforce tells us where we're at, underlining or highlighting. So the left-hand side is how we're going to build our report. Preview screen is on the main page. And it's underlining the outline, right? It's underlined here. So this is where we're at. This is where you can see I can start adding fields. And you can see if you look down as I start to build my report, I'm going to put fields I want on the page. It tells us and it kind of categorizes and organizes where these fields are coming from. The fields then, the under general account, are coming from my account record. Maybe I want to pull in, oops, my computer doesn't like this, a particular field and I can scroll down and find it, or I can actually type it in if I know what the field name is. And see how it's, as I type, it's actually saying, oh, you want this field? It's from the general account, and I can say yes. So it's telling me where it's pulling in from, because again, I'm pulling fields in from multiple objects potentially. And we may even have duplicate field names. So be careful and understand where it's coming from. As I add it, you can see there it is, right? The record type for my account. So I continue to build and add fields, and it's adding those to my report. I can drag this and move it to different places on my report as well. Okay, so the outline is where I'm going to add fields. If I want to group fields by record type, I can actually drag that field up here. You have to put it below the search, which just takes a little bit to get used to, but now it's grouped it, right? So I haven't saved and run this yet, so it's only pulling in my business clients. If I save and run, it's going to pull in more than just one record type because I have multiple record types with policies. Not done yet. Okay. So by default, Salesforce sets us to the outline. What I usually recommend people is to go to the filter first, right? Filter and then build your fields. What is the filter? Just like building a list view. What records can I see? What records do I want to eliminate? Again, if I'm building a brand new report from the ground up, just like when I'm building a list view from the ground up, Salesforce's default goes to my, not all. Why they do that, I don't know. So be careful of that, right? And what does my mean? That means the records I own, that I'm assigned to, that literally I'm the owner on. So again, if I'm building a report, I'm like, this is definitely not everything. What is going on? Check your filter, just like building a brand new list view. Very similar, see? Building list views and reports, I told you. So what I would do, what I usually tell people is open it up and then close it back down. So I'm going to open up all of my accounts. And now I'm going to create an additional filter. Maybe I only want to see the accounts that are in force. So I create an additional filter. I know the field name is type, and I'm going to say all I want to see then. Instead of all accounts, I only want to see in force client accounts. That's going to remove accounts that are terminated, right? So build out your filters. And again, these are the two areas we're going to build out a report. Filters, what do I want to see? What do I want to exclude? Make sure you're careful of the my versus all, and then go in and start building your report again, learning the system. This is brand new, right? Adding in the columns I want to see on my report. And if I start grouping them, I want to start to cluster them. I want to see all of them together. There's probably hundreds of thousands of fields in Salesforce, so it's going to be impossible for you to know exactly what fields you're looking for, or even what the names are. What I recommend is the dual screen, right? Right click, duplicate, open up one window, have another window open. Look at what you're looking for. Look at the policy record. What fields do I want to pull in, right? That's a really great way. I recommend that building list views. We're never going to memorize all the fields that are in the system. So take an example of a policy record and look at the field names. Do that. In addition, see this little side toggle? This is a little bit newer. It's been around for a couple years. I can actually see all the fields. Okay, so again, back to my accounts with policies. If I go here and open up this field, I can actually see all the fields that are available. And look at what they did. They organized it for me. It's showing me all the fields under account object. Hopefully this helps give you a visual. And then the policy object. So this is the only thing that's available. If I'm trying to pull a field from actions, no bueno, right? Doesn't work because I'm not pulling in I did not pull in that object into this report type. But if I want to see all, a lot still, however, then this little toggle will allow me to then slice and dice and see all the fields that are available. And when I'm done, I can just close that little window, but that's important to know that it's there. It's kind of on the side. Okay. So we're going to then, when we want to run it, we're going to save and run. Okay. Again, be careful. Okay. We're going to name the report. Just going to name this test. Be careful. I can put my description in. Salesforce should populate that for me. Gobbledygook, right? Put in a description if I'd like, but the default is private again, just like the default is recent. So if I want to put it where I want it to go, I need to go and find the folder I just created. See how I did that? Open it up, select the folder, see how it tells me I'm about to save this in the right folder, and then go ahead and save. It takes a little bit to get used to because this is the only place in Salesforce that does this. This functionality works identical with dashboards. We're going to run out of time, I can tell, but we'll get as far as we can today with the training. Like I said, this is a very, very complex part of the system. It takes a while to get used to. So save and run. So I save and ran it. Now it's pulling in all the different types. It's pulling in more than just maybe our one record type. I want to point out toggles at the bottom. This is something I've never seen in any other system. Took me a good year or two to figure out that they were there. I kind of learned on the fly. So important, very, very awesome, important feature. Okay. I talk about this when we talk about commission reporting specifically. Look at this. I don't have to scroll if I want to see, are there other report or record types here? Oh my gosh, look at that. I can close the details and open them back up. And all that did was close my grouping so I can see without scroll, or even exporting what is going on with my report, and it gives me a summary. Super cool. On commissions, I can eliminate subtotals because it's going to subtotal maybe by, by date. And I can decide if I want to turn on and off grand totals as I go to the bottom. So really great feature. And as you can see, I don't have to create a whole new report. Other systems, we have to create a whole new report to see summaries, toggle it on or off. Super cool. Okay. So play around with that. Make sure you understand what it does. It can be really helpful when we're trying to summarize and see what kind of report we're building, but also even when we export it, we may want to see that summary instead of all the details. Okay. Some of the editing features. I can edit the report, which takes me back into that editing capability. I can save as again and change the name again if I would like. Okay. We can add it to a dashboard. We can also add it to a campaign for those people that have the enhanced Salesforce. I can delete it. I can subscribe, which I'll talk about in a minute, and I can export. I'm going to show you quickly, jumping around just a little bit today. Exporting. Remember I mentioned there's two different formatting types. I have a formatted report and I have a details report. This is basically like the raw data. Gets rid of all the fluff, right? Gets rid of the some of the grouping. So if I want to take the raw data and I need to move that into maybe another Excel spreadsheet because I'm doing some analytics on the outside of Salesforce, definitely details only. And then I have the ability from there to decide what type. I'm going to cancel this for a second. If I do, for example, and I want to export this and I want it in the formatted version, let's see what it looks like, right? When we export it. So again, learning what the differences are gives you a better understanding of what am I trying to get out and how do I want it organized. One of the things about the formatted is it's pretty, right? And that can be really helpful. If we're pulling it out, we want to display it in a summary format just like this, right? But man, this can be painful if I'm trying to get the data or the details. If I, undo the details here and I want to go and export again, right? I can decide and I can go details only, and it's going to just give me the raw data. I mean, literally columns and rows. Before I knew this was a feature, and it might have been before Salesforce had this as a feature, it was really painful to undo all of that pretty formatting when I needed to move my data from one report to another. This is what it looks like. Okay. So raw data, got rid of the groupings. I can now, row by row, super easy to now manipulate that. So that's the big difference between the two. Okay. Make sure I'm hitting all the main points here. Let's talk a little bit about charts. Okay, so this is an enhanced feature. This is where I can build a chart, which is a graphic, right? I have my report. I have it organized by my record types. These are some policy details, very limited. I didn't build out my report very well here for you. But if I click on the toggle chart, this gives me it'll tell me what chart, if a charting it is available, like I said, if this is grayed out, the way that I've built my report doesn't allow me to use any of the charts. So I have to modify my report. People have asked that question too. Once I turn it on, then I can go into the chart properties. And again, just learning how to, and what my options are, just, plug and play. And you can see, based on the way I've built this report, not every single chart display is available, depending on how and what data I have in my report. Okay. And then again, I can see the preview. I can see how this is starting to come together, what my options are, what does this look like? How do I organize it? How do I sort it? Do I have the ability to change the sorting? And just learning some of the features here. And we'll go probably into more detail in another session about, what do I want to see totals? Do I not? Do I want to see percentages? Some of this stuff is really cool. Okay. So I could spend hours probably building out a chart, right? If I decide I do not want the chart, I can turn it off here. However, I believe if I save it, it's going to show up again. Otherwise, I can go to the bottom here in my chart or the chart features properties, and I can remove the chart here as well. Sometimes it gets in the way. You think you want a chart, you don't. You can turn it on and off, and then we can save it as, save the report. Couple quick things. I mentioned you can do a search in the system if I'm looking for who do you think I'm looking for? Of course, there's a lot of Bob's Bakery stuff. So see how it highlights? It's like the Control F in Excel. Can be really helpful. I can look and I can toggle. I'm just tabbing on my computer. This is newer for me, and man, it's helped me when I'm looking for something very specific. Maybe I'm looking for a policy number, right, in a commission report. Things like that can be really helpful. In addition, let's say something is out of line, okay? And I want to edit. This name of this policy is incorrect. Remember the pencil? I'm telling you guys, if you listen and learn with the training sessions, all of this understanding Salesforce applies throughout the system. So I turn this on and guess what? Pencil shows up sometimes, right? Oh, look at, maybe this is wrong and this actually isn't an enforced client anymore. If I click on the pencil, I can actually edit the field right here. Maybe they're terminated and now I save it. Careful though, I just changed the record, right? So be careful about that, but can be really helpful in the report. I can actually change some of the fields. Don't have mass updating yet here, but maybe that'll come. Okay. I did caution as well about building out my chart into too much detail. If you're not going to put this report on a dashboard, go for it. Spend a bunch of time building out your chart. If you're going to build out and put this report on a dashboard, I would probably save building the chart for when you build out your dashboard, and you can do it there. And there's some additional features for charting that can be really helpful. I used to spend hours building out charts, and then I'd move it over to a dashboard and I'd spend another hour or two redoing the chart again. So just kind of another tip and trick. And again, little icons, again, just like list views, if I want to get back to my filter quickly. I'm going to pause for a second because we're going to pivot over dashboards. Did I miss anything? Yeah, we're running out of time. Okay. So again, what's the difference between report and a dashboard? Reports is what we just built, okay? And we're going to grab related relationships between fields to display the information. A dashboard is a page. If I look at my home page, if I look at my home page and what we give you as a default, maybe, you will see that this is actually a dashboard all the way down, okay? Over here are other components that we can drag and drop. I can find those dashboards in that exact dashboard right here, right? I go to the feature, just like I said before, recently viewed, be careful, all folders, create a favorite. Okay. So I can edit and I can change and I can modify what I see on my home page simply by going to the dashboard and changing the dashboard. Okay. In addition, I can build a new dashboard, just like I had shown you how you can build a report. One of the differences, right? I have to actually build and I have to save the dashboard first. Let's just build a test 2 real quick. It's going to save it under my private dashboards. Be careful if I want to change folders, right? I got to move it, create a new folder down here if I want. Make sure I know where it's going before I save it. This is what it looks like. It's like a, what's it called? I don't know, it's like a, what is that? Those, when I see the graphics, right? So it's breaking this up, and this is my page. Best way for me to explain it. And it's empty. Remember I talked about widgets? So this is where we can add our charts, text, and images. We're going to build our page. I'm going to grab a report. Again, recent versus all folders. Grab the one you want. I'm going to add it. It's going to give me, this is where I said we can either select to use the chart settings from the report. So you can build the chart in the report and you can say, yeah, I want it, whatever I built there, to show here. I didn't have a chart there, that's why it's not showing. Or I can just build it now, and there are some additional features. Just be careful of that, like this. If I want a list, that's one of the big ones. I can actually create a list, like a list view right on my dashboard. Okay. So that's what that looks like, right? So it's a whole new feature you can't even get when you're building that chart in your report. See what it does? Like most things, Salesforce, top left, it loads it in, but I can move it. It's a drag and drop feature, right? I can build it out, make it bigger or smaller, and I can even edit my report. Again, changing what I see if I want to. A lot of times you'll see some of the dashboards we built, we're using the same report and we're just showing it in various different ways. So there's a lot of use cases where you don't have to build 5 reports to see, things in 5 different ways. You may have one report, have a bunch of fields loaded in, and we just want to see it. Oh, this time I want to see it based on account manager. This time I want to see it by record type. This one I want to see it by status. Same exact report. Pretty cool. And I can see it in various ways and add that report over and over again onto my page. Maybe this time I want to see that totals here. Look at that. Now I can go and drag it here. Make it bigger, smaller. Okay. Just like with reports, I save as, right? Or just save because I already built it, right? A couple things to be careful of is we want to look at the properties I'd mentioned. Where is it saved? I can change it here. Who is viewing it as? So I can change the visibility. All right, now it's viewed as me. So everybody that sees this is going to see it from the eyes of my user. I can change kind of the grid, that's the word I was looking for, to make, bigger or smaller. This is where I can change it from light to dark. I can decide general themes. Kind of cool. People like dark, light themes. So those are some of the ways that we can change the general design. Again, we can't change some of the colors that I probably would like. We can select a theme or a palette, they call it. Okay. Can't change the colors within that, to my knowledge. Ian might know best about that one, though. Okay, let me show you a quick test one that I built earlier. This is where we can drag and drop text or an image. Why would we do this? Maybe you do want an introduction, you want to export this, you want to make this visible, you want to have the client's logo, you want to make it a little pretty. But at this point, those widgets, I'm sure this will change and probably there'll be some additional features eventually. But right now, really the big one is your charts or tables from your reports. And I could add some text and or images here. Just drag and drop it and grab it from your files. Let's see where we're at. We're running out of time. Let's talk a little bit then with the last couple of minutes about our ability to jump through here to refresh and subscribe. Okay. As I mentioned, when I build a report, we save and run, right? It's a preview until I run the report, right? Same thing with dashboards. It's going to give me a snapshot of what data is in the system the last time that this got refreshed. Okay. So if I'm making a bunch of updates and I go back to my dashboard and I'm like, wait a minute, there's a bunch of information missing, I can force a refresh and it's going to grab that data. It's going to push out all those new records and changes, and it's going to refresh my chart. I can manually do that. One of the limitations, guess what? One time every minute, I can refresh. So you got to be a little patient. Okay, so be careful of that. But also, as I go into to the Salesforce Benelinx system, first thing you do every day, last thing you do at the end of every day, correct? Right? I can also subscribe. What that does is allows me to force the system to refresh. Maybe I want to do it every day. I don't want to do it at 10 a.m. That's like noon for me. I got up at 3 o'clock this morning. Don't tell anybody. But maybe I want to do it daily and we want to do it before I get on my computer. So I can set that, right? And I can say, yes, I want to set this. I want to see emails coming through weekly, and I can hit save. Okay. Let's go back to a different one. Let's go back to my home. Okay. So you're going to want to subscribe to each dashboard, even your home dashboard. If I go to subscribe, I can do that again here. based on the visibility of this dashboard, I can actually invite Ian. If I said, you know what, I want Ian to get this report, this dashboard update every day as well. He is a user in our system. I'm going to add him here. It's so weird that there is no save or anything. So you just X out. That's strange to me. But here you can see and you can verify that we've added the 2 users. I've set the time. I can decide if I want to receive an email that's confirming that. So it's a nice little reminder, right? Every morning, wake up, I get an email. Oh, yep, your dashboard's been refreshed, and I can hit save. If I subscribe once, I don't have to do it every day, right? I just told the system, refresh for me every morning or every week or every month, right? It's going to send me an email. I can even bring other people on board. If I'm building a dashboard for maybe a management meeting and I want 3 other people, they're going to get access and subscribe to that. I can do that, right? I can do that with commissions. So my paid producers, I can subscribe, right? Once you subscribe, then it's going to refresh for you, and it can even notify you that it's been refreshed. And if I'm doing a lot of updates and I want to see this updated immediately, I can hit the refresh button manually. Very cool things, right? And probably more to come. You have to be a user to be a subscriber. You cannot be just a contact. So they have to have a license for that to work. One of the requests or comments or questions we've had in the past. Can I subscribe an outside user? Salesforce says no. Okay. Once I've built my dashboard, right? If I open it, edit, right? I can, again, the pencil gives me the ability to edit this particular report. So I can go in and edit the report. I can change what I'm seeing, how I see it, and then go in and update and save. So each one of these, right, is just a report. And maybe the same report, like I said, showing different ways of showing different data, exact same report. So I have the ability to make all these changes, right? And change things around, edit the actual report. The bottom here, I can change titles. I can change where the legend is. Maybe I don't want it at the right. I want it at the bottom. Very much just preference, right? People ask us like, why don't you guys have more dashboards? I'm like, because it is such a personal thing, right? We have a lot of custom build outs. We have a lot of custom fields. So we do a lot of building for our clients during the onboarding, really understanding what they're looking for is what we need, where we start. One last thing I want to mention. This is a dashboard, right? Your home page is a dashboard. This component, they call it. One of the cool things I think we're going to see more and more is I can see this particular report is showing, you know, our pipeline, what's coming up, our renewals coming up, January, February, March. December's fallen off, right? So some reports, depending on how you build them, at least that has been my experience, are dynamic. So we can see, okay, what's going on with our, you know, pipeline, what's coming up, who's going to be managing which accounts, how many renewals are coming up in the next quarter. If I wanted to see, okay, Ian's got 3 in March. If I click on that actual, bar in that chart, it's not only going to open the report for me, it's actually going to open the report specific to those 3 that Ian has for March. Now I can go down here and I can see which ones he's got and which accounts are renewing in March. So it's interactive a little bit more. So it's great to be able to have. And again, the goal is always for us to be able to use our dashboards for visibility and analytics, right? This dashboard should be helpful for all of your users. What is our pipeline? What are, you know, where are we at with our implementation processing? What has been closed? What hasn't? Actions. What's our day-to-day requests? How many have come in? How many are still open? And then we can use this. A lot of our clients will use the homepage or some other dashboard or various other dashboards to have our weekly meetings, right? Where is the agency as a whole as far as what's coming up? Where are we at with processing our renewals and what's going on with our day-to-day? And on the right-hand side, we even have our own personal tasks. interactive. If there's questions and we want to see more information as we're having our meeting, we can actually click on the report. It opens it up and it drills down for us. Really, really helpful tools. Gives us that detail. And now it's kind of subdividing our report and giving us more information about the actual data within the system. One last thing I want to mention. If I build a dashboard and I really like it, remember I talked about favorites. I can go here. I can make this a favorite. And I don't know if you remember many, many, many moons ago, but many trainings ago, if I can add different things to my navigation bar. If you don't like your homepage or you want a different dashboard as the first thing you see when you wake up and turn on Benelinx, you can go to the pencil, add more items, and guess what? The default is my favorites. I can grab that dashboard that I just built and I can say, that's great. I can't change my homepage, but I can change what I see. And I just built a dashboard I like. And guess what? I added it to my navigation bar. And now when I go to my agency management first thing in the morning, instead of seeing my homepage as the default, I see my dashboard. I just added it as a favorite. I can add my favorites right to my navigation bar, and now I can move it over. And now the first thing I see, and maybe the only dashboard I pay attention to, is the one I built. Fabulous, huh?